This is ContraZoom.
Where we go back and forth about film.
I'm Dakota Arsenault.
And I'm Matthew Simpson.
It is finally here, the Best Films of 2025 episode of ContraZoom Pod. If you're new around here, you might be asking, why, Dakota, are you only releasing this list now, at the end of March? Early April. Well, it is tradition around here to wait until after the Oscars have happened, as that is truly when I put a bow on the previous movie year. Looking at my list now, there are actually two films I saw for the first time after December 31st, and one film I rewatched this year that wouldn't have made my top 10 if I didn't see it a second time around. This is the final episode of Season 11, and we'll be starting back up in a few weeks, starting with Season 12. Got some fun stuff planned. Joining me to help with this list, as he names his own top 10 favorite films of the year, is Matthew Simpson from Awesome Friday and Northern Reel. Matthew was last heard on episode 331, the 2026 Canadian Screen Award nominations. How are you doing today, Matthew?
I'm well. Thank you so much for asking. I'm excited to talk about this. I'm actually always curious about your list because you leave it so late. And I think that we have different approaches to our lists, which makes them interesting and complementary in kind of fascinating ways, actually.
I'm curious to hear, what are your sort of your thoughts on me waiting so long to reveal my list?
Well, I sort of just respect the idea that, you sort of wait until you've seen everything, or certainly all the big stuff, right? Yeah. And, the Oscars are debatably the end of the film year, even though they happen in March now, which just feels super late. And just to contrast that with, my sort of method is more, I keep track of all the films I watch in a given year, and then when it comes time to do my top 10, I will only include ones that I saw in that calendar year. So, for example, there's at least there's one big one that I'm going to put in my honorable mentions, but wouldn't make my list because I didn't see it until 2026.
Yeah.
So, and that's just for ease, basically. And I also just, if I was going to redo the list every time I saw another film from 2020 from that year, I would just always be redoing my list. So I set a hard deadline of December 31st is the cutoff. I get consider everything I've seen in that calendar year. And then I still have lots of great movies from that year to watch. They're just not going to make my list.
Yeah, that's fair. It started because when I started doing this podcast, it was a lot harder to catch up on the year's releases. And with so many of the big Oscar awards contender type of films don't get released, now, we sort of see them more and more September, October, November, but a lot of them don't come out till mid to end December. And some of them don't come out till the new year. They'll have their qualifying run, they'll do the festivals and things like that, and then they'll get a limited release and then goes wide, the middle of January, end of January, or things like that. And so it was just so many movies like that where I was I feel like I'm missing so many. And so that's sort of why I there's a bit of method to my madness. I totally get why other people do prefer to put the January 31st is a great hard deadline. You roll the calendar over, you start a new list. But for me, it just sort of made sense to kind of keep going until the end of Oscars, especially since a lot of the smaller films that traditionally, now that I go to more film festivals, I do see them ahead of time. But a lot of these smaller films, specifically international ones, documentaries, things like that, weren't on my radar until they started to get awards attention. So that's sort of why I do this for the dear listeners who might not know. Obviously, you and I have had many discussions about, end of year eligibility and all that thing and things like that. And it's also nebulous anyways.
Yeah. And honestly, the other thing to consider for me is that you have a very, traditional top 10 list. You take a lot of time and you consider what's going to be number 1 and what's going to be number 7 and so on and so forth. Right. So the other big difference in our methodologies is that we are going to go in accounting order here today. But my list is my favorite film and 9 other films. Put them in whatever order you want. So just to let everyone know ahead of time, until we get to my favorite film, my list is actually in an arbitrary order, but we are going to go in the order that I wrote them down in. So there's that.
I mean, I'll say this for my own list. All 10 of the films I'm going to talk about today are 4.5-star films. So, I have switched them around a little bit. I personally am super strict about giving out 5 stars, and last year I did not give any new release movie 5 stars. I've got a whole bunch that are like, if I was doing more decimal points, maybe it's a 4.9 out of 5. But for some reason in my head, I'm very strict about being this is a 5 out of 5. This is a flawless film in my opinion, things like that. And I know people have completely different methodology. That's my own methodology. So
I
kind
mean,
of
this
like
is
you.
another interesting point of contrast too, because like on Letterboxd especially, I only do whole numbers, so like 4 and 5, not 4.5, not 4 3/4, just 4 or 5, or 1 or 2 or 3, and it's very much vibes.
Yeah.
Like, so some things will get through on technicalities, some things will make through because they made me cry, whatever it is. But like, so I don't give it a ton of 5 out of 5s, but I gave out 5 last year. I think one, two,
Mm.
three, 4, 5 last year, all of which we'll be talking about today. And then a number of 4s, but I don't have any 4.5s because I decided a couple years ago that 4.5 is just a 4 and 3.5 is just a 3. And my wife hates it. Lots of people I know kind of hate it, but it does keep me a little more honest. Like it's not the best way to judge things, but my sort of graph of ratings became a much more recognizable curve. You know what I mean?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
When I did that, because I'm totally the kind of guy who would be like, I'll give it an extra half star,
Yeah.
like kind of arbitrarily. So forcing myself to be only whole numbers made my list, I think, a lot more honest. And because
Yeah.
I'm not hard ranking things against one another 99% of the time, like I think it just makes sense to be like, these are my 3 stars, and these are my 4 stars, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth.
Yeah, that's fair. One last question before we get into it. What are your views on release eligibility? And what I mean by that is something might play at a festival but not get a wide release, whether that be theatrical, streaming, VOD, or wherever else it might be, until a year later, sometimes even 2 years later. What do you categorize as a 2025 film for you?
So for my own purposes, I tend to just go with films that I saw in the year that I saw them in.
Mm.
Um, I don't, as it probably sounds, I try not to make it too complicated. um, so like if for my personal needs, if I saw something in 2025 and that's the year it was produced and had a festival run or whatever, then that is the year that I consider it in.
Yeah,
I know that
looking at
awards
your
shows and
list.
stuff don't do the same, and very famously, our Cascadia critics does not do the same. But I just want to keep it as straightforward as I can for my own personal reasons, because it's all just vibes anyway, right? So
Yeah. I would say I think there's only one movie on your list. I'm not going to spoil which one it is. I think is a movie that had a festival run, but does not have a wide theatrical release yet.
I think I know which one you're talking about
Yeah.
because, well, let's not spoil it till we get there.
Yeah, yeah. But I am a few years ago. I used to be, if I saw a movie the year it came out at a festival, it counts. If I didn't see it until the year later, when it comes out wide, I would count it for that year. But now I'm very strictly looking at it as theatrical wide release only. So I did originally have some movies that were, played the festival circuit 2024 and maybe a little bit earlier, but now they are strictly I've switched my brain. I've hardwired my letterbox to be going forward. It has to have had a wide release or as close to a wide release as a movie will get, because obviously some movies never do get a wide release or things like that. So it has best of my ability for wide release only is my calendar.
Yeah, I mean that sort of makes sense too. Um, I think for me, the difference is that some of the, at least one of the films that we're going to talk about, and potentially as many as 3. I think there might be 3 that actually are on my list that didn't get a wide release in 2025. But they're all Canadian, and so the definition of a wide release is quite a bit different than your average Hollywood film. So I tend to consider them when they come out, just because I think it's important to talk about them, among their peers, which a lot of people, I know you do generally, but lots of people don't.
Yeah.
So, but like I say, there's at least a couple in here that are probably harder to find. One that will hopefully not be very hard to find very soon. But they are, they're all also up for CSAs. So there's that.
Yeah. Which, plug here, if you haven't listened to our Canadian Screen Award nominations episode, Jeff joined the two of us and we had a great talk, and we will be doing plenty of CSA coverage down the line as well. So check that out, along with Matthew's new website, Northern Reel, which covers exclusively Canadian projects.
Yeah, it's very fun. It's very fun to blog with purpose a little more specifically than I have before.
Sometimes I do wish, tangent here, I do sometimes wish I had a little more specificity, because I feel like I could hone in on a niche a little bit more. The problem is I like swimming in a very wide but shallow lake, I guess would be the way to put it, which, has its ups and downs.
Yeah, nope, I get it. It's hard to, even, the niche of being like Canadian, that opens up to a ton of genres and a ton of kinds of films. So it's still, it's still a pretty wide river, as it were.
Yeah.
And I think there's another great example of that would be our friend Rachel, who she has a site called The Asian Cut, which is representing specifically the Asian diaspora in film. And I think that's great. But again, and it's very specific, and it's also very broad in a very, I think, good way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Before we get into our top 10, do you have any sort of general thoughts on the year that was 2025? Did you think it was a particularly strong or weaker year, or anything like that?
I thought it was a great year for film. I think I gave out more 5 out of 5s last year than I did the year before. And I think the films that I loved really deeply, in a way that maybe I didn't before. But I also think that most years are good years for film. Like there's always good stuff. I'm just happy we get to watch film.
Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat. I asked the question, even though I kind of usually hate the question. I love movies. So, every year that I get to watch movies is a good year for me. And, this year I think has plenty of films that I'm going to cherish and consider some of the best of all time, in my opinion, or some of my personal favorites or things like that. According to Letterboxd, on my list of films of 2025, I have 96 films, which is a great number to have. But yeah, it was a great year. I think it's a lot easier to, categorize a film year as good or bad the further away we get. More so in the terms of, was it a deep or a shallow year, to use sort of similar terminology that we were just using before. But as of right now, I thought it was a pretty great year. There was lots of stuff I really liked, tons of films that I thought were very, very good, and would love for them to make my list and be able to talk about them glowingly, but we do not have the time or the energy or the resources to do such a thing. So I think we should probably just get into this top 10. Do you think we should do so?
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Let's get it going.
Well, okay, before we get into it, I do want to say we're going to have a lot of voicemails today from friends of the show. I reached out to some people who are, regular guests, or just people that I love interacting with in the movie sphere, and asked them, hey, what's your favorite movie, or what's a movie you want to highlight specifically as one of your favorites of the year? Send me a voicemail, and I'll feature it in the show. So before Matthew and I get our say, I think it's only fair to start off with the great Bill Antoniou, host of the Bad Gay Movies and Riviera Rats podcasts, to talk about what his favorite film of the year was. So here you go, Bill.
Hi, this is Bill Antoniou. I am the co-host of the BGM and Riviera Rats podcasts, and I have my own Substack under my name. My favorite movie of the year was Raoul Peck's Orwell 2 + 2 = 5. It's a documentary that uses the biography of the author George Orwell to show how his diary entries and fiction parallel and predict what we see happening in America right now. His diaries are read by Damian Lewis, but of course a great deal of the material comes from his most famous book, 1984, which was published a year before his death at the age of 46, and was inspired by his childhood in a British colony as well as what he witnessed in 2 world wars. 1984 is a book that shows how a totalitarian government can use comforting propaganda to justify controlling its citizens, and Orwell takes the novel's slogans like freedom is slavery and war is peace, and he applies them to historical footage that has nothing to do with the book, such as Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Myanmar, the war in Gaza. But he also explains and examines why it is that people's fears are so easy to take advantage of, and he talks about the vulnerability of journalism, which is supposed to defend people's freedom, but ends up being the method by which freedom is taken away. The movie's not all doom and gloom. It has bits of optimism at the end, particularly about the ways in which we can work towards fixing things, but it really, really upset me and galvanized me, and that doesn't stop me from wanting to watch it again. Also, what I love about this movie is that it is an exceptional example of collage filmmaking. You have film clips from various movies, including film adaptations of Orwell's own work, that are interspersed with the historical footage, as well as the graphics that Peck creates with information. It's just mesmerizing. I really, really love this movie. I really loved One Battle After Another, and it was my favorite of the nominees, but Orwell was my favorite of the year. Thanks for having me.
That's really funny. I've really wanted to watch Orwell 2 + 2 = 5. It's been on my list for a while. And yeah, it's a shame I haven't been able to see it, but you know, if Bill speaks glowingly about a movie, you better add it to your watch list because he knows what he's talking about.
You know, I haven't seen it either, and I've only ever heard good things.
Great. Well, then we'll both put that on our watch list. All right. Well, let's get into our actual list now. Matthew, you kick it off. What is your number 10 film that you want to talk about today?
Yeah, I'm going to start with one that is probably a little obscure by the average moviegoer's standards, and that is Reflection in a Dead Diamond, which is directed by Bruno Forzani and Hélène Catet. It is a European Giallo-inspired spy film. The basic logline is, when a mysterious woman in the room next door disappears, a debonair 70-year-old ex-spy living in a luxury hotel on the Côte d'Azur is confronted by the demons and darlings of his lurid past, in which movie-making, memories, and madness collide. Before I go any further, I have to ask, have you seen this one?
When you added it to your list, when you share me your list, I had not seen it, but it was one that was on my radar and on my watch list. And because you specifically included it on your list, I made sure to do a little bit of homework and watched it.
Right. So this film is what I might politely describe as a fever dream in the best way possible. I don't know if everyone else is aware, but you know, Dakota and I both went through a bit of a Giallo phase in the past couple of years. And this one takes a ton of cues from Giallo horror, but also weird Giallo spy movies, especially the work of Mario Bava, and especially the film Danger Diabolik, which is a wonderful film if you haven't seen it. It also does this interesting thing where it mixes time frames. There's time frames in this film. There's timelines in the past and the present. There's things that are actually happening, and there's also a movie that's being made, and it all collides in ways that are difficult to parse, but super rewarding to sort of like figure your way through. Super rewarding on multiple rewatches, and also just maybe one of the most beautiful films I've looked at all year as well. Maybe not for everyone, but certainly one of the most unique and powerful film experiences I had in 2025.
So I will say this. This movie came on my radar because Jeff reviewed it. He saw it at the Toronto After Dark Film Festival, I believe, and sent me a review, and I never heard of it. And I read his review. I was like, holy cow, what is this movie? This seems tailor-made for myself and to you as well, Matthew Simpson, based on, you know, all of the genre hat tips it has going for it. And I wish I could say I liked it. I unfortunately did not. You know,
it's very specific. Like it's like I don't. It's not surprising to me that you don't. Not because I expected you to not like it, but because like I cannot predict who is going to like this movie and who's not going to like it. It is maybe the dictionary definition of a lot. You know,
yeah.
Like there is so much going on. There's so much weird interspersed timelines and characters. and just like super weird psychedelic visuals that like, I'm sorry you didn't like it, but I am glad that you watched it, because this is not a film that I could confidently say you will like, but it is a film I can confidently say I hope you all watch it, because I think those of you who, like me, who can connect with it will connect with it very deeply, and those of you who don't might reject it outright. And I cannot predict any middle ground between those two things. But that's, it's great art. It's great art for you. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was beautiful to watch, and there were some really interesting things going on. My only real wish was I wish there was a bit more connective tissue between the segments and a bit more clarity with what they're trying to do. Because of that, I often found myself drifting and losing my attention to what was happening, and when I would, spend 5-10 minutes of not knowing what was happening, just feel, disconnected from it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And I would argue that your mistake there was trying to figure it out. That like, this is very much a vibes movie, and you just need to coast on the vibes and let them wash over you. And when the time comes to watch it a second time, the vibes will probably change. Whether that's for good or for bad, I don't know, but I look forward to finding out. If you have it in you to watch a movie again and watch this one again, I would love to know if you react better or worse or the same.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm going to talk about my number 10 film, and that is The Secret Agent. Still don't know how to pronounce the director's name, but I'm going to say Kleber Mendonça Filho. Amid the political turmoil of 1977 Brazil, a technology expert is forced into hiding and seeks help from the underground resistance as he tries to flee the country with his young son. So, this was the film I mentioned in my intro that I had watched once before December 31st, and on a rewatch, it made my list. And so what I will say is, I saw this at TIFF last year. I saw it, the director was in attendance, Filho was there. And I watched it, and it was kind of, near the end of my TIFF time, and so I was exhausted. I think it was my second or third movie of the day. I was exhausted during the day. I think I might have even, had to close my eyes for a couple minutes. All I'll say is, the plot utterly confused me. I had no idea what was going on, and I thought there was too many what's the best way to describe it? Tangents that were taken that didn't seem to add to the plot. Upon rewatch, I realized having my full attention was definitely the key. I love this film. This was absolutely incredible. I thought that Wagner Moura was absolutely terrific. I loved all the world building and atmosphere. It really helped, I think, watching I'm Still Here, the other Brazilian film from 2 years ago, sort of help set the template. They both cover the same era of Brazil in terms of when the dictatorship was happening. And here in The Secret Agent kind of showed the mindless bureaucracy that comes with dictatorships, where things happen that make no sense because people are either too lazy or are not being paid off to care about them. And so things slip through the cracks very easily. Add in all the great homages to cinema, especially Jaws, you have a real winning combination. So I don't blame people for maybe not getting it on first go around, but on the second watch through, everything made sense. Everything clicked in. All these side little quests that they were doing made perfect sense, and I thought was absolutely stunning. This is one of the most gorgeously shot films, I think, from last year that are on my list, with some great comedy and some really heavy drama as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said, except for I didn't need 2 watches to love it. But I watched it at home, to be fair, and I was awake. So there's that. But yeah, I also really liked it. This would probably be one of my honorable mentions if it wasn't on your list. I wanted to make sure that when we get there that we talked about different things. But I will say that I sort of there's some people I know who sort of bounce off of it, and it is pretty slow. Like, it's 160 some minutes, and it does take a long time to sort of get to the point. But in the meantime, it is also one of the most beautifully shot, and I would argue best acted films of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, couldn't tell you why it didn't make my sort of top 10 or even my honestly top 15, but it's certainly one of the more. Oh, you know what? The other problem, I can tell you exactly why. I didn't see it until 2026. This is
Oh.
the big reason. If I had seen it in 2025, it probably would be on my list.
Yeah.
And it is wonderful, and Wagner Moura deserves all of his flowers. Like, I've loved that guy for a while now, and to see him win a Golden Globe for this was very rewarding. To see him like get some accolades, because it is, I think, one of the better performances of the year, and he has such a sort of understated and intentful way of performing. That I'm always really happy when that kind of thing gets rewarded, because most award shows, my favorite joke is that they reward most acting rather than best acting a lot of the time. And
Yeah.
this is, I think, a great example of a much more, slower, lower key, but more intentional performance than would normally win awards. So I was very happy that it won.
Yeah, for sure. Terrific performance, and yeah, if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth checking out. It is a little confusing at times, especially if you're not familiar with the history. Not that I'm a great historian on 70s era Brazil, but if you know a little bit of knowledge, it really does help going into this film. To pay attention and follow along.
Yeah, and just for the record, I'm pretty sure that it's Kleber Mendonça Filho.
Thank you. This way I don't have to get a note from Bill about my terrible pronunciation. So thank you, and I hope that you're correct.
I'm probably butchering it as well, but I think I'm closer.
I definitely know that you're closer than what I said.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how about you lead us off with your next film, your number 9 film?
Awesome. Let's talk about. So this is a very Canadian film, probably hard to find. I don't believe it's had a wide release yet, but it did have a very successful run in festivals last year, and it is also nominated for a number of Canadian Screen Awards this year, and that is Wrong Husband, which is directed by Zacharias Kunuk. We talked about this a little bit on our last episode, but the plot is that after a mysterious death, Kojak and Sapa are separated despite being promised to each other at birth. And with the help of spirit guides, efforts are made to restore harmony to this Arctic fairy tale set in an Inuit community. This film is basically a retelling, a staging of a fairly famous Inuit mythology, story of these two tribes at odds with one another, and has a very incredible sort of dreamlike quality to the way the story is told and the way it's shot. It's almost unfair that they could just point a camera at none of it and it's just starkly beautiful every single time. But it's also an interesting and very Canadian film in that it is entirely in Inuktitut, and features entirely Indigenous actors, many of them non-professional. It's very much like a great companion piece to Anatarjuat, which was Zacharias Kunuk's sort of seminal film from around the year 2000, which won the CSA for Best Picture, or I guess it was the Genie Award at the time. And it is just very wonderful. Like, it's a wonderful story. It's a wonderful fairy tale. And it does have some budgetary limitations, which I think might put off some people. But if you are willing to look past that kind of thing, it is a wonderful story and a wonderful film. And the two leads especially are both so great as this young couple in love striving to get back to one another. I really love this movie. And I hope you did too. I think you saw this one, right?
I have not seen this one yet. I know, which is very surprising. It's very high on my list because of the fact of Kunuk's pedigree and this being nominated for a bunch of CSAs. But yeah, sadly, I have not seen it yet.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like I say, it hasn't had a wide release and it's not available to stream yet. But I do hope it connects with a fairly wide audience. once those two things are true,
Yeah.
much like an Atari Let, which is currently available for free on the NFB website if you live in Canada. I hope that it goes somewhere where lots of people can access it, because it's a beautiful film, and it's one that I think deserves to be seen.
Yeah, Jeff had a great interview with Canuck, and made me want to watch this even more. But yeah, this is high on my list to get to, and I'll probably be able to watch it in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Nice.
All right, well, we're going to get to our next voicemail, and that is from Randy Meehan of the Cinema Cave Press.
Randy Meehan from the Cinema Cave Press, and I just want to say my favorite film of the year, hands down, was Clint Bentley's Train Dream, starring Joel Edgerton, Felicity Jones, William H. Macy, and like the best narration possible in any movie ever, I'd have to say, from Will Patton. You could fall asleep to this guy's voice. It's just the most phenomenal narration I've ever heard. So this is about a logger that leads the life of quiet grace as he experiences love and loss during an era of monumental change in the early 20th century America, set in the Pacific Northwest, which is dear to me because my grandfather actually worked on the trains in the Pacific Northwest. So having a connection there, this movie really hit home for me, and it made me want to, pursue making a film with a similar subject matter. Now, this is adapted from Dennis Johnson's novella, Train Dreams. I gotta say, I haven't really watched a film that adapted a novella so well like this one. And the performances were just... they exceeded my expectations. William H. Macy brings like the most heartbreaking performance of his career. Joel Edgerton is really, he's really in this character, and he's very believable. Felicity Jones also, same thing. That's all I can really say. You really got to watch this movie to understand the level of what they've reached here. And that brings me to the cinematography. Like, Alfonso Veloso is a cinematographer. He shot this on an Arri Alexa 35 with some vintage lenses, all natural light. Every shot that he composed was so intentional and unconventional. The framing is so bizarre sometimes, and it felt really like the image came first. They really knew what they wanted. You can pause this film at any moment and be like, wow, I could print that off and put it on my wall. It's so beautiful. There's so many more reasons I can say about this film that really make this my favorite movie of the year. It definitely shouldn't have won Best Cinematography at the Oscars above everybody else. I don't care what anyone says. That's my thoughts on it. And Train Dreams. I couldn't say any, I'm at a loss for words at this point. I could go on forever about how much I love this film.
Now, this segues greatly into my next pick, which my number 9 choice is Train Dreams, the film that Randy was just talking about. So, I'm going to sort of repeat a little bit of what he just said, but it was directed by Clint Bentley, and it's based on Dennis Johnson's beloved novella. Train Dreams is the moving portrait of Robert Grenier, a logging and railroad worker who leads a life of unexpected depth and beauty in the rapidly changing America of the early 20th century. This is a beyond stunning film. This is the same team that brought us Sing Sing from 2 years ago, another absolutely gorgeously stunning, heartbreaking film, and this one is no exception. Joel Edgerton continually proves to be one of the most underrated actors working today. He's often in a very supporting role, but every once in a while he gets a chance to be a lead performer and just knocks it out of the park like he does here. I think the narration in this film really ties the room together of it all. Narration, I know, is such a hit or miss topic for a lot of film lovers, and this is an example of narration really serving a purpose and sort of almost makes you feel like you are watching a book. so to speak, because you really sort of get into the mind of Robert in this life that he lives. It's absolutely heartbreaking at points. We get some real moment of, brutal violence in loss, and that really haunts you. And there's some real moments of beauty and life affirming moments that sort of make you celebrate everything that's going on in this film. And then to top it all off, this is, just one of the most beautifully shot movies I've ever seen. I mentioned The Secret Agent being beautifully shot, but, this was my choice for Best Cinematography at the Oscars. I would have loved if it, pulled out an upset win, because the Pacific Northwest is just stunning, and they do a great job photographing these gorgeous, expansive forests. So yeah, this is a movie I really love, and one that I know that you're a fan of too, aren't you, Matthew?
I very much am, and I disagree. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, and I
Nice.
will have more to say later.
Nice. Okay, well then, how about you lead us off with your number 8 pick then?
So my number 8 pick is quite a different vibe than the ones we've been talking about so far. But I am going to go with Warfare, which was directed by Ray Mendoza and Alex Garland. The story here is a platoon of Navy SEALs on a surveillance mission gone wrong in insurgent territory. It's a boots-on-the-ground story of modern warfare and brotherhood told in real time and based on the memory of the people who lived it, namely Ray Mendoza, who is played by DeFero Wunatai in the film. I don't quite know where to begin with this movie, but it's the kind of film that some people will dismiss as propaganda. And every war film is, to some extent, propaganda. But every honest movie about warfare is an anti-war movie. And this movie is no exception. This is a stark reminder of the cost of war. It's, and it's a look at the bonds of brotherhood and fellowship that these young men, form with one another, the things that they endure, and the things that they have to do to fight and survive, and just also the crazy disorganization of what modern warfare looks like. It's a film that, on the one hand, is not overtly political, but is very subvertly political, if that's even a word, because it is a film about war and the things that happen in war. It is beautiful is not the right word, but it is stunningly shot, and the sound design is incredible. There's constant things happening that give you a real immersion into the world that they're living in, which is really just one house. And then at 96 minutes, and it's 96 minutes and it's told in real time. So you are sort of in and out, and you're in it the whole time with this platoon of young men, all of whom are played by like up and comers, like Will Poulter's in this, Cosmo Jarvis, Finn Bennett, Michael Gandolfini, who's great, by the way, Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton, like the list goes on. It's a stunning film, and I think it's a shame that a lot of people will write it off as just another war movie, but it is very much not that. And I look forward to watching it a bunch more times, to be honest. But it is a tense watch. It's not an easy watch, but it is one that is like drops you in and just shows you what it's like. And it's as close to the battlefield as I personally ever hope to get. I don't know. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I absolutely love this movie. This makes my honorable mentions list. It's sort of interesting where when the movie came out, the discussion about it, I think, got it all wrong. And, every few years there's a movie they're like, I don't know how many critics or pundits were able to so clearly miss what was going on in the film like they did with this one. You're right. Like this tries its best not to be political, but in that way kind of shows off putting it mildly, the futility of the American war machine and the idiocy that they sometimes have in terms of these half-baked plans. I think it also probably doesn't help that Ray Mendoza, who clearly went through a great ordeal, is very much who you'd sort of associate with being a pro-military propaganda, to put it mildly, whereas
for sure.
Alex Garland isn't. So it's kind of ironic that the two of them, made this great film together. Ray Mendoza brought the story, and Alex Garland made it into something truly great, is what I'll say about all that. But you're right in highlighting this fantastic cast. This is also going to be one of those movies that, 5-10 years down the road, you're going to be looking at whatever the equivalent of BuzzFeed articles of like, can you believe this many big stars were in this movie? That they got all these actors right at the precipice of them becoming, mega stars, so to speak, where you're like, how did they cast 30 people and all 30 people are, household names? Things like that. Things like the Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, things like that, where you can look back and be like, holy cow, this cast is insane.
Yeah. And it's the kind of movie that if we still watched TV like we used to, this would be on TV. This would be on like TBS in the States, like every weekend.
Every
type
weekend.
thing.
Yep.
Right. And what I like is like it, we're talking about how it's not overtly political. I think what I wrote when I originally saw it was that one of the best things about it is that it doesn't ever stop to say this is bad or to say, but we were heroes. It just says, here's the story as we remember it. You decide what you want, which I think is great. Because it plays out so realistically. I'm just going to quote my own little review because I think I sort of encapsulated how I feel about it really well. But I said, given how realistically it all plays out and how little we know about the nearly deserted neighborhood these men are stationed in, it's hard to then imagine anyone coming away thinking anything other than, these are the young men that pay the price for our leaders' wars, and maybe we shouldn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's a stunning film. And I was very surprised that I feel like you're right. I feel like a lot of people either wrote it off without seeing it or sort of missed the point.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think in a couple of years we're going to get a fairly strong reassessment of this film.
100%. Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to my number 8 film, and that is Predator Badlands, directed by Dan Trachtenberg. A young predator outcast from his clan finds an unlikely ally on his journey in search of the ultimate adversary. I have absolutely been loving what Trachtenberg has been doing to the Predator franchise. For listeners' perspective, I've only seen the original Predator and then the 3 that Dan Trachtenberg has made, and that is Prey, and then he also did an animated film before Badlands came out called Predator Killer of Killers, which is also absolutely fantastic. It's a triptych of stories of 3 different warriors facing off against a predator, kind of in the vein of Prey, but done in an animated anime style. That is just fantastic. But here we've got another unique sort of spin on the Predator world, and that's where the Predator is the main character in the story. And we meet this young predator named Deck, who we learn very quickly that he is the runt of his family. He is smaller than everyone else. He does not possess the same bloodthirsty kill level that his father and older brother possess. Despite all this, his older brother does have feelings for him and protect him, but his father kills the brother as the brother is trying to protect Deck. So Deck flies off to a home planet, and the Predator test is that they have to kill the toughest adversary that they can find, the biggest foe on the planet, things like that. That's the whole point of what the Predator universe is about. Well, we're getting it from the Predator side of things. I'm giving so much backstory, I don't know why. But either way, Deck lands, and he is going to kill the unkillable beast that even his father is scared of, and he meets a cyborg, which half a cyborg, it's Elle Fanning with no legs, who he straps to his back, who basically uses universal translator so that way we can understand what's happening, and they go and hunt the unkillable beast. But yeah, this movie is terrific. It's about found family. It's, all these sort of cheesy cliches that on the surface should not work, but they do, and it includes some absolute kick-ass action scenes. And Elle Fanning is very quickly becoming one of my favorite young actors. She crushes a dual role. She plays sister cyborgs, one that's through most of it, and then one that kind of shows up later as a bit more of a villainous role that I won't say too much about. But damn, this movie is gorgeous to look at. The fight sequences are terrific, and there's just enough heart and humor to really get on board. I know you are a Predator fan. Were you a fan of this movie too?
Absolutely, I was. I similarly am a big fan of what Dan Trachtenberg has been doing with these films. For me, it didn't make my list, whereas Prey did, because I think that one's a little bit more focused. I think would be the word I would use, but this one is maybe more fun. In fact, it's a ton of fun. It's an interesting conceit that a predator is the main character. But even if you're sort of not on board with that, it's worth watching, like I said, just for Elle Fanning, because she is incredible in this. And it's incredible she's had such a year, like between there's this and Sentimental Value, and there's one other thing she was in last year in which she was also maybe the best part. Yeah, she's wonderful. And the whole film is just a ton of fun. It's like a perfect popcorn movie. And I can answer why you're giving it so much backstory, because that backstory all comes in like the first, like, I don't know, 20 minutes of the film. And then the rest of the film is just awesome fun.
Yeah. It's tough because it's a hard movie to talk about without sort of giving what the conceit is. If you've seen Predator movies, you're like, well, why are you doing it based on the Predator's perspective? And so you kind of need to talk about that. But yeah, it's really the first 15, 20 minutes. And then it's just very much a very traditional hero's journey type of movie, but in the most fun way possible.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Because that's exactly what it is. And then you have, like, you mentioned that Elle Fanning's main character is half of a cyborg. So for most of the movie, that's true. But then when she finally like meets up with her legs again, one of the most interesting fights I've seen in a film in years happens. Mm-hmm. And I love the action in this. Trachtenberg has got such a good track record of this kind of stuff now. Dude is 4 for 4 with feature films, and also 3 for 3 with Predator films, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll sort of comment on is, like, it's no mystery that Predator and Alien, those franchises technically share the same universe. There's been 2 Alien versus Predator films. And in this film, it's the first time since then that we get a bit of integration between them. And I think it was done very seamlessly in a way that both was really good nods to hardcore fans of the Alien franchise, and I don't think it was enough to throw non-Alien fans or casual fans for a loop of being like, what's this sort of stuff that's going on? What's this Weyland-Yutani? I don't understand. But I think they did a really good job with that. And, Trachtenberg's already been hinting at there's going to be more collaboration between these franchises to come. So I'm very, very curious what he's going to do, because at this point, sign me the hell up. I'm ready to do whatever he wants to do.
Yeah, me too. And I think, honestly, I'll go one further and say that there's enough Alien stuff in this movie for people like me who are into the Alien franchise to be like, oh, that's Alien stuff. But it's also completely unintrusive to the point where not only will it not bother people, I don't think most people even notice. Like, it just doesn't matter. Like, there's stuff that's there and it's cool, but it's never like, look at this thing. It's always just present. And that's the best way to do these kind of things, right? It's never, it's fan servicey, but it's not like in your face. It's never like, there's maybe 1 or 2 times where it's prominent stuff, like a Weyland-Yutani logo is prominently on screen. But it never doesn't serve what's happening on screen. Like, it's never a long, slow pan in on a Budweiser kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
it was done very tastefully.
It just, like, it doesn't matter that it's there. It's cool that it is, but it doesn't actually matter, which is the best way to handle this kind of thing.
It's great because whatever they do next, this is the good setup. They did the set off, so now they can do the payoff.
Yeah, 100%. Although I would say that the ending of this movie, the payoff of this movie's plot is pretty great. So
Yes, 100%. It definitely sets up something where you're like, okay, I need to see what you're doing next of where this is going to lead to.
yeah.
All right, well, let's move on. And got a voicemail from someone here named Rachel Ho. I'm not totally sure who she is. Apparently, she's the editor over at Exclaim, and she's here to talk about a movie.
Hey, it's Rachel Ho here from Exclaim Magazine. My favorite movie of 2025 is EFIS. That is the directorial debut from Carson Lunn. All the more impressive that it's a directorial debut because it doesn't feel like that in the slightest. This movie, though, it definitely feels like a movie that was made for me. It is nostalgic. It is a vibe movie. It is about baseball. So everything about it is ticking off all of the boxes of kind of my ideal film. I have watched this movie probably about 6 times since it came out, since I discovered it last year. And every time it just gets better. It's a movie that I can sit with very comfortably. It captures a very intangible feeling that you can't quite put your finger on, but all of those feelings of nostalgia to not just your childhood, but just, I suppose, a simpler time in your life. This movie embodies it perfectly. So if you haven't already checked it out, I would highly recommend it. Baseball fan or not, it's an incredible movie.
I don't know how I have not seen EFIS yet. It's a baseball movie that's right up my alley, and Rachel mentioned several times in her message that it's vibes, and that's how she describes my movie watching, so I don't know why I haven't seen this yet. Have you seen EFIS?
I have not seen EFIS, and I also don't know why. Especially given that it's on a streaming service that I subscribe to, technically. So maybe I'll fix that in the near future. But no, I haven't seen it. I have only heard good things. But to be fair, I've also only heard them from Rachel. So, that's not to say that other people aren't saying good things. I just haven't heard anyone really talking about this film. So it's actually pretty exciting to me that it's on my radar because, love an underdog.
Yeah. I can't believe I never did a baseball episode with Rachel. Like, that's just craziness. We're both huge baseball fans, and you too. Like, I don't know why we never teamed up for a baseball episode.
It's a good question, but I will point out that it's also a wonderfully solvable problem.
Yeah, that is true. All right, well, let's go on to your number 7 pick, Matthew. What do you got?
So my number 7 pick is another Canadian film. This is Foreigner. So this is set in 2004. It's about a young Iranian immigrant named Yasemin, or Yazi, and she is the new girl at a Canadian school. Her high school experience is daunting as she tries to improve her English by watching her favorite sitcom and befriends a trio of pastel-clad girls who feed Yazi's need to fit in. Desperate for acceptance, she dyes her hair blonde, and in doing so, attracts a demonic force. This movie is basically Mean Girls crossed with The Exorcist. And basically both the high school and immigrant experience as a horror movie. And it works on all 4 of those levels. And it is great. I will fully admit that I think it stumbles a little bit at the ending. And I think that is largely due to it sort of punching above its weight budgetarily. But the whole thing is super relatable. The performances are all great. In particular, Rose Degan, who plays Yasemin, but also Chloe McLeod, who plays Rachel, who's sort of like the queen bee of the plastics of this universe. Her and her the two sort of followers, who are Emily and Kristen, played by Victoria Wardell and Talisa May Stewart. They are, just imagine like Mean Girls. Imagine, Rachel McAdams and the other 2 Mean Girls from Mean Girls, but make them actually mean, like horrifically mean. This film has a lot to say about what it means to fit in, what it means to assimilate, the dangers of that, the dangers of losing oneself in a new identity, in a new culture, about maintaining your existing cultural identity whilst trying to assimilate, and whether you should do any of that at all. It has nods again to The Exorcist, to Mean Girls, to Stranger Things. It it's great. If you like horror films, this is a film for you. If you've been through high school, this is a film for you. I don't think this movie's had a wide release yet, but it had a very successful festival run, and I can't wait for more people to see it.
Yeah, this was a movie that was one of our 5 finalists for Best Cascadian Film this past year over in our critics group, Cascadia Film and Television Critics Association. And one that I also was sort of advocating for more of our members to watch. I like this quite a bit. I do think it sort of suffers a little bit from budgetary issues and, a more green director. I think if this film was made later in her career, I could see it just being so much more bolder and over the top. But that said, this is a very terrific feature film and has a ton of promise where I'm very excited to see where her career goes next. But you're right. Everything that you hit on, this movie is so fascinating to watch. I do really like the Mean Girls meets The Exorcist vibe that it's going for. There's some really strong performances and really unsettling moments that happen in this film, and definitely one that I do hope people to check out. It's probably going to be the hardest film on either of our lists for people to see. Hopefully it does maybe get a bit of a wider release, and maybe it'll end up on something like Crave or another streamer for people to enjoy down the road. This definitely feels like it might grow into being a cult classic type.
Yeah, 100%. I know it's been picked up by Raven Banner, so it will get some kind of like VOD release at some point. I don't know when that's going to be, unfortunately. So it will be somewhere. And yeah, I can't wait for more people to see it. I think you're right. I think it's entirely possible that, Eva Maria Safai, who directed this, it's only her second film. And I think the other one might even be a short. I think. 16 minutes. It's only a short. So it's really her debut feature film. And I would say that, like, between her being new and the budget being maybe not supporting what she was trying to do at the end, especially, it does suffer a little bit. However, this is me being very nitpicky and very, I think that it's still a super strong debut. I think it's a very exciting debut. I think that she, those things we're talking about being very plot and effects related. However, she's gotten, I would argue, incredible performances out of all four of the main girls in this. In particular, Rose Degan and Chloe McLeod. And it's the kind of film that, like, I loved it. And I am very excited for whatever Ava Maria Safai has next. Like, if she can bring this level of intensity while at the same time, like, flexing a little more experience and a little more, and hopefully a little more money, whatever she does next is going to be incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm very excited to see what she does next for sure. All right, so I'm going to go on to my number 7 film, and that is a documentary called The Alabama Solution, directed by Andrew Jarecki and Charlotte Kaufman. Incarcerated men defy the odds to expose a cover-up in one of the United States' deadliest prison systems. So I saw this. This is one of the ones I saw after January 1st. This was nominated for Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars this year. And it talks about the prison industrial complex in the United States, which, not to say Canada is significantly better. We have miles away to go to work towards prison being a place to rehabilitate people back into society. That is a conversation a lot of people do not want to have, unfortunately. But the United States has it so much worse than almost any other developed country in the rest of the world. That is overcrowded. It has people getting terribly long sentences for crimes that don't match up with the punishment. It has people not being incarcerated at the right facility due to their level of crime, all this sort of stuff. And in this documentary, basically, the Alabama prison system is so overrun with inmates and so few guards that it is super easy to smuggle things like phones inside. And so you have large groups of inmates that all have phones in there. And this documentary is made by literally FaceTiming inmates, where they talk about what is going on. And using these phones, the prisoners are able to communicate with other inmates across other jails, because very often when, fights or things like that happen, they'll get shuffled to a different prison. And so it's one way to sort of keep tabs on people and understand situations that are happening. And it is an absolutely brutal, dehumanizing look at the prison system. Like, just moment after moment, you think your jaw can't drop any lower, and it is just going to get lower and lower with disgust and pain of the way these people are treated, specifically these men are being treated. It is very demoralizing to watch, but at the same time, a very needed tool, and that's what documentaries are so great at, is shining a light at, the things society doesn't want us to see. And I think it does a terrific job. At one point, these prisoners are fighting for reform. So I think there's 8 prisons in Alabama. They collectively all go on a hunger strike, and it lasts for, at least about a week or two before some of the prisons unfortunately end up having to stop the hunger strike, and sort of how that's going and things like that, and how it's being portrayed in the media. But this is a very, very powerful film. I really hope more people do check it out. It's a terrific watch. Not terrific in an entertaining kind of way, but terrific in enlightening yourself. It is on Netflix, I believe, so it's super easy. Oh, it's not Netflix. It's HBO Max. Never mind. So it is still fairly easy to see, but yeah, I highly recommend people check this out if you have not.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one, but I didn't actually realize it was Andrew Jarecki until I just looked it up. So I will add it to my list because I've liked, I think, everything that he's made. In particular, obviously, the big one recently was The Jinx for HBO a few years ago. But Capturing the Freedmans is good. And so is he produced Catfish. So yeah, he's got a good track record. So this is definitely going on my list.
Yeah, it will really, I think, help recontextualize the way we view incarceration and in the way rehabilitation is treated, for sure. So definitely, people should check it out if they can.
Yeah, and we're in Canada, so it is on Crave, just for the record.
Crave, there we go. Yeah, so it's very easy to watch in Canada, HBO Max in the United States, whatever that platform is now, because they change all the time. I don't know, but definitely worth checking out. All right, Matthew, what is your number 6 film?
Mine might be the most controversial pick on the list. I'm not really sure how we're feeling about it these days, but I love Zach Cregger's Weapons, which, for those of you who haven't seen it, is a story of one night at 2:17 in the morning, every child from Mrs. Gandy's class woke up, got out of bed, went downstairs, opened the front door, walked into the dark, and never came back. All the kids but one mysteriously vanish at the same time, and the community is left questioning who or what is behind their disappearance. This is a stunning picture of grief. It's about school violence, school shootings. It's about self-acceptance. It's about how do we move on from these things, from these massive group traumas. And at the same time, once you learn that Zach Cregger wrote this whilst grieving for his best friend having passed away, it becomes something even deeper. And I'm assuming that most of the people who listen to the show have seen Weapons and come down on this, one side or the other of, is the ending too much or not? And I happen to think that it's perfect. Not only the part that people object to, but the very last moments of the film in particular are perfect. And I also think it does a masterful job. Cregger does a masterful job of like mixing up the timeline of this film. in a way where there's several sort of main characters and their stories sort of overlap and interlock in interesting ways. So you see scenes from multiple perspectives over the course of the film. And through all of this, you have Julia Gardner and Josh Brolin giving 100%. You have Amy Madigan playing a role that some will argue is too cartoony, but I will argue is perfect and totally deserving of all of the awards she won this year. And then it's another one in the Alden Ehrenreich, which I'm very happy about, because he is kind of great as the sort of idiot cop in this movie. I don't like, even now it's like a year old, and I don't want to say anything more about the plot, because anyone who hasn't seen it, I feel like going in as blind as you can would be beneficial. But if you haven't seen it, I hope that you do, because it is easily one of the best films of last year, I think.
It's so interesting. I like just about, take any scene out, show it to me. I'll say I enjoy it. I loved basically all the performances across the board, specifically Alden Ehrenreich. I thought he was really terrific. The scenes with him with the junkie are some of the best moments, I think. I did really like Amy Madigan's performance, and I wasn't bothered by the explanation of everything that's happening. Yet for some reason, the sum of its parts just sort of equal an okay movie to me, and I don't know why. I can't quite put my finger on it. But like, I agree individually with everything that you said. I agree with. It's just for some reason the total package just did not work for me, and I really don't have a good reason why.
I mean, I think honestly it might just boil down to, and this is just me spitballing, like we haven't talked about it at length, but I think one thing that a lot of people struggle with is that there are a lot of jarring tonal changes in the film, and that can be a lot. I think there's two in particular. There's actually, let's be honest, there's one in particular that a lot of people have a problem with. And I think it's a perfect release to what has been building throughout the film when it finally happens. And it's a film where like some of the horrific stuff that happens is also kind of the most comic-y, ridiculous, over the top stuff that happens at the same time, and that's a difficult needle to thread. So
yeah,
I get why it doesn't work for some people, but much like other films on this list, it's one where if you haven't seen it, regardless of what you've been told, I think you should watch it and decide for yourself. Like, whatever you know about this film, it probably isn't what you think it is. And you should watch it for yourself and experience it for yourself and see if you connect. I can't guarantee you're going to. But again, I think if you do connect with it, you're going to connect with it very deeply, much like I did.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into any detail here. There's a few moments that I think script-wise didn't make sense for me. And I think maybe some of those hang-ups caused me to not fully get on board. But yeah, I'm glad this resonated so much with you. I did think Amy Madigan was terrific. She wasn't my personal pick to win the Best Supporting Actress Oscar, but I love when genre films are recognized, and hopefully this paves the way for horror to become even more recognized. And, she does do a great job. She is very convincing at this role that she's playing as Aunt Gladys.
I mean, yeah, it's one of the performances of the year for me.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, well then let me go on to my film in the number 6 slot, and that is the latest film from Bradley Cooper, Is This Thing On? As their marriage unravels, Alex faces middle age and divorce, seeking new purpose in the New York comedy scene. Meanwhile, his wife Tess confronts sacrifices made for their family, forcing them to navigate co-parenting and identities. I've mostly been pretty high on Bradley Cooper as a director. Really loved his first film, A Star Is Born. I was a little middle of the pack for Maestro. I thought he gave a good performance in a fairly weak script. But I think, I don't know if Is This Thing On is his best film or not, but I do really loved how he was able to sort of rein in, I think, what he's been accused as some of his bad tendencies and make such an intimate film. And also Will Arnett delivering, probably the performance of his career. I think he's one of the funniest actors ever. And seeing him in such a dramatic role is terrific. And, Laura Dern's always fantastic. So no complaints about her here. But yeah, Will Arnett really sells this guy that, just sort of stumbles into being a stand-up comedian. He's someone who's naturally charismatic and kind of funny, and you can see how he can turn his pain into stand-up routines. And, there's some really great moments. There's this great scene where Laura Dern is going out on a date with, even though he wasn't in focus, he was on the far end of the room, I recognized Peyton Manning's giant dome from a mile away. And I was like, what the hell is Peyton Manning doing in this movie? And sure enough, it was Peyton Manning. And the two of them are going out for dinner. And then he's like, hey, there's a comedy club next door. Do you want to go check out some comedy? She's like, yeah, sure, let's do that. And then they go, and then she stumbles upon her ex-husband doing stand-up about their marriage, and just sort of like, all of these emotions, you feel them all at once for both of them. He doesn't realize she's watching. She doesn't let him know that she was there. All this stuff. A fantastic masterclass. And then also, as I was watching the credits, realized that Bradley Cooper was the Steadicam operator. And there's quite a few shots in this film that I watched and I was like, ooh, that's some really terrific Steadicam work. And then realizing afterwards that it was Bradley Cooper himself manning the camera. Terrific work. I know this movie came and went with so much of, I don't know, no one seemed to notice it came out, let alone that Bradley Cooper directed a new movie. He also has a small part in this movie as an absolute idiot, and I love Bradley Cooper when he's playing an idiot, a pompous idiot, frankly. And yeah, this is terrific. Is this one that you have seen, Matthew?
So no, unfortunately it is not. This is one that my wife and I have been talking about watching for literal months, and I don't know why we haven't done it. Yeah, it's interesting too, because like this film is also loosely based on the life of a comedian who I like called John Bishop. And I've seen him talk about it as well, and talk about his story even like before this film was made. So I'm very interested in it. I've actually been pretty down on Bradley Cooper's films, very generally speaking, as a director. Like, I don't think they're bad exactly. I do think that Maestro screams, please, for the love of God, give me an Oscar. And I think that, The Star Is Born is fine. That's a different podcast. There's a lot of great things that come out of that movie, but it's too long of a discussion. But I'm very interested to see him working on something that is a little more low-key and a little more just intimate and personal, and maybe not, trying so hard. Try hard would be the way I describe his films. And I'm very excited by the idea that this maybe isn't that.
I think this is a terrific date movie for couples that don't have any major issues, because there's a lot of stuff that sort of comes up where, it's so, I think of something like Marriage Story or movies like that where it's about, separation, divorces, things like that, breakups, where it's good to watch with a partner because you can have constructive conversations about your own relationship and how it's perceived on screen and all the sort of, interdynamics of being with someone else and how that works out. And I think this movie works out really well if you're in a solid relationship, because you can have conversations of like, oh yeah, and this person, Will Arnett does this, and that's something that you might do, or, you've done that in the past and that bothers me, but, this is how we got past and this is how we resolve it, things like that. So I do think this is ironically a terrific date movie.
Interesting. Well, like I say, I'm sure that we will watch it soon, but we just have not got around to it yet.
Yeah. And Kieran Hinds is in this, and Kieran Hinds makes everything better.
That's true. So does Amy Sedaris, who I just learned is in this too. So yes, there's lots of great people in this film.
Yeah, this is a stacked cast for sure. All right, well, I have another voicemail to play, and this is from a very good friend of the show, Marta Georgievich.
Park Chan-wook's No Other Choice was my favorite film of last year because it perfectly captures that fine line between desperation and insanity. And in the sort of state of world we're living in now and job uncertainty, it just clicked so heavily with me. Of course, the film is adapted from Donald E. Westlake's The Axe, and Park turns a corporate layoff into something that feels like a full-blown capitalist nightmare. But what makes it so striking is how funny it is at the same time. He balances this really elegant rage with moments of almost slapstick panic. And visually, it's incredible as well. There are these playful, almost mischievous shots, like placing the camera at the bottom of a glass when someone downs a drink. That one really stuck with me. And another thing that I wanted to touch on is the gardening motif. The main character, who also cares for his plants, sees himself as someone who carefully trims and maintains things in his life, like he's weeding out obstacles to build a better life. But of course, what that reveals is something much darker as well. The whole thing ties back to this brutal metaphor. He's spent years working at a company that literally produces disposable material, paper, right? Which is something meant to be used and thrown away. And then he's treated the exact same way. It's a sharp film, it's unsettling, and I honestly think it's a crime that it wasn't nominated for any Oscars. My name is Marta Georgievich, and you can find my work at rewindandrevive.com, as well as on Instagram and Letterboxd at Marta McFly.
Always love to hear from Marta. She is one of the smartest critic that either of us knows, and we are very proud to call her a member of our Cascadia group. So always great to hear from Marta. No Other Choice is a movie that didn't quite work for me. I had a little bit of issues. I don't know. It's so funny. Park Chan-wook either makes some of the best movies in my opinion or just some very messy movies, and I feel like No Other Choice kind of lands closer to the messy side than All-Timer. Was this one that you've seen?
No, I missed this one, and I don't know why. It's one that should be on my list. It's one that everyone I know who's seen it says is good. You're actually, so I had never heard you speak about it before, and you're the first person I've heard who said anything bad about it at all. So I've been very excited to watch it. And I don't know why I haven't yet. It doesn't make sense. Probably just because I've been busy watching a bunch of Canadian stuff, honestly.
True.
But yeah, it's been on my radar like since TIFF last year, or VIFF at least. So I don't know why I haven't got around to it.
There is always one movie every year that's like consensus across the board. You know, this is one of the best movies of the year that I'm just like, did I see the same movie as all of you? What's going on? And for me this year, it was No Other Choice, where I am the contrarian. That it's like, it didn't quite work. Didn't quite work for me there.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't hate it, but like I felt out of place because I didn't adore No Other Choice, or not No Other Choice, Decision to Leave, which I thought was a very good but not amazing movie.
Yep.
And even that felt contrarian at the time.
Yeah, I'm very much in the same boat with you, where it feels contrarian, where it's one of those things where it's like, if it comes up in conversation, I'll say, oh yeah, I don't care for it, but there's no way I'm going out of my way to draw attention to myself and being like, and I don't like No Other Choice.
Yeah, and like honestly, like with the one I mentioned, like it's not that I don't like it, it's just that it's fine. Like it's not the life-changing thing that everyone has told me it is, but it's still fine, you know? It's fine.
Yep. Yeah. All right, well, what is your number 5 film, Matthew?
Well, my number 5 film is Rian Johnson's latest whodunit, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. And I would just like to say that I personally hate that they are called that and not a Benoit Blanc mystery. But that's neither here nor
Blame
there.
Netflix. That's Netflix's fault. He doesn't like it either.
I mean, yeah, no, I don't think anybody likes it, but, you know, brand recognition is the thing. For those of you who don't know, This is the story of the young priest, Judd Duplessis. He's sent to assist a charismatic Monsignor Jefferson Wicks, and it's clear that not all is well in the pews after a sudden and seemingly impossible murder rocks the town. The lack of an obvious suspect prompts local police chief Geraldine Scott to join forces with renowned detective Benoit Blanc to unravel the mystery that defies all logic. And this film, much like Glass Onion and Knives Out before it, is another very well composed murder mystery. If you like murder mystery stories, I would actually argue that of the three, the mystery part of this one is probably the weakest. However, the performances are wonderful, and it is probably the richest in terms of its thematics. Even more so than Glass Onion, it has a lot to say and a lot that it thinks about where wealth and power lie and how those things can corrupt a person, what the people who have them do with them, and how we can perhaps resist that a little bit through the character of Judd. And not for nothing, but Josh O'Connor, who for some reason isn't a global megastar, is absolutely incredible in this. Like, everyone is incredible in this. Like, this cast is stacked. You got Glenn Close, Josh Brolin, Jeremy Renner, Kerry Washington, Andrew Scott, Kaylee Spaney, Thomas Hayden Church, Jeffrey Wright. Like, there are so many people in this film. And of course, Daniel Craig, obviously, I don't think I mentioned his name, returns and is wonderful. But Josh O'Connor, between this and The Mastermind last year, I think might have had one of the strongest performing years of anyone we could talk about. And this film being so zeroed in, and again, much like Knives Out and Glass Onion, where the rich people are bad, this one, to me at least, was very much the powerful people are bad, and here's a counterpoint to that, which made it a lot richer to me personally. And I frankly just hope that Johnson and Craig keep making these movies forever. I hope that at some point we look back and consider Benoit Blanc to be one of the great movie detectives. That would be a very happy thing for me. So I'm assuming you've seen this either at a festival or on Netflix. And your quiet composure has me worried that you're disagreeing with me entirely.
No, I was just letting you sing its praises. I had the great pleasure of seeing this in a theater, thank you, Netflix, during the Toronto International Film Festival, where there was 1 million screenings of it. So I was lucky and able to catch it. Had a fantastic time doing so, and then watched it again at home on Netflix once it came out with my wife. This is a terrific movie. I love it. I love the Knives Out. I'm very much in the same boat as you. We also feel the same way about the Kenneth Branagh, Agatha Christie movies, where it's please just keep making them. These are terrific. Yeah, I love this. I'm curious. What is your Knives Out rankings or Benoit Blanc rankings? I'm curious to hear.
Oh, that is impossible for me.
I know I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
It's probably 3-1-2 with the caveat that I've given them all 5 out of 5.
Okay. Yeah, I did a rewatch in preparation of watching Wake Up a second time, and it's probably 1-3-2 for me.
Yeah, and I think it's valid. I think that what tips it over is that this one offers the strongest counterpoint to the overall theme of bring down, eat the rich.
Yeah.
And the most resonant. So they all offer a counterpoint, but this one offers the one that resonated best with me, I think, which is weird because I am not religious at all. But the way that Josh O'Connor's character approaches religion in stark contrast to a character who is, more in line with a current contemporary American political leanings, I found very, very affecting. And maybe it's a little bit of its time, of its moment, but for me, that's what made it sing. just a little bit clearer than the other two.
I mean, that's one thing Johnson's been able to hit on for all three, is making them very much a movie of their times. And you can already see, not that I think it's aged them poorly, but, you know, rewatching Glass Onion, the way they handle COVID, or rewatching Knives Out and seeing, you know, the rise of right-wing fascism and things like that. Those are subjects that are tackled in both. And in this, you know, the corruption of religion through politics is something that's very much a current topic, has been for a very long time, but also very much a current topic. I think he does so well. And Josh Brolin just, you know, attacks each moment with, you know, his jaw fully unhinged to bite off as much scenery as he can.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like all of that's true, and I will still just come back to say I think it might be the weakest mystery for me. Like it's definitely the one where like there's a specific moment in this film where I'm like, oh, I know who did it, you know, without any hesitation. There was a moment where I'm like, yep, it's all clicked into place. I just need to figure out how now. So that is one thing about it, but the thematic resonance is what really pushed this one over the top for me. I loved it. Of the films we're talking about, I get five out of fives, which is an awkward thing to say last year, and this is the first of those 5.
Nice. Yeah, and it's a damn shame that Netflix is releasing these movies, because this was a gorgeous film to watch on the big screen and absolutely deserved to be seen by as many people as possible on a big screen.
I lament the idea that I will probably never be able to buy like a box set or steelbooks or just 4Ks in general of these movies. I know there's one of Knives Out because it came out before Netflix bought the franchise after that, but I do sincerely hope that there would be physical release for these. Although that seems to be a bit of a pipe dream these days too. But again, that's a different podcast.
Yeah, and like it sucks because like one of the big conceits about this is very much harkening back to the like classic Poirot films, is that you have this big grandiose cast, which costs a lot of money. You know, when you're halfway down, when you have to scroll down quite a bit on IMDb just to see names like Kaylee Spaney, Thomas Hayden Church, and Jeffrey Wright, you know that the cast is very deep. And that costs a lot of money, and Netflix seems to be one of the only companies willing to throw that much money at movies, which is, I'm glad this exists. I'm so happy it does. But damn you, Ted Sarandos.
Yeah.
That's all I guess I can really say about that. I don't know. But you're right. This is a terrific movie, and if you're a fan of the first two, you're going to be a fan of this one. It's hard to argue that Rian Johnson does not have the juice, because he absolutely does.
Yep.
Okay, well then let me go to my number 5 film, and that is the Joachim Trier film Sentimental Value, an intimate exploration of family, memories, and the reconciliatory power of art. I first got introduced to Trier's work through his last film, The Worst Person in the World, where it made my top 10 that year, I believe. Absolutely adored it, especially Renata Reinsva's performance, and he's back. I don't want to say exploring similar themes, but exploring, you know, very tragically messed up people as they try to navigate the world around them and how they fit in with each other. Here we've got this aging director who is hoping for one last kick of the can, played by Stellan Skarsgård, and wants to make a autobiographical film. And have it starring his daughter about how he wasn't the best dad. And his daughter, you know, who's an actress, doesn't want to be involved in it. And so he decides to reach out to an American actress who has shown interest in him, played by Elle Fanning, who you already mentioned earlier, being in this film, to star in his film, and, you know, the buzz that creates and sort of the extra friction this now places on the family as they have got an outsider playing one of themselves. It also stars Inga Ibsdottir Lilias, who is the other sister, and she just does an absolutely terrific job. Frankly, steals the show, in my opinion. Every scene is just so much quiet intensity that she brings. But Stellan Skarsgård is just a tour de force as well. I absolutely love him in this film. You know, he gives his grandchild a copy of Irreversible, which, you know, peak grandfather vibes there as a cinephile. But yeah, this is a great movie. Is this one that you've seen there, Matthew?
Yep. This is one that probably would have made my top 10 if I had seen it in 2025, but I did not see it until last month. So it did not make my top 10. And everything you're saying is true. And Elle Fanning, I think, again, her and Josh O'Connor, I think, had the best 2025 performance-wise. Like, they're both so good in both of their roles. And everything else you said is true. I don't have anything to add. Perfect. Nice summation.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yeah. Renata Reinsve continues to prove that she is one of my favorite actors today. And, you know, my crush for her knows no limits.
I mean, the only thing I might add, honestly, is that if you are like, I think actually a lot of people who have only seen like maybe this and maybe The Worst Person in the World, you should definitely seek out more of Joachim Trier's films. I didn't fall in love with him until 2017's Thelma, which is his fourth film. But like literally all of them are good. Like, you should definitely check them all out. But this one might be his best one yet, I think.
Yeah, I've been wanting to dig deep into his filmography for a little bit now, and the fact that he's now 2 for 2 for me really sort of like highlights just what a terrific talent he is, and the fact that his earlier work comes such highly regarded. You know, I think of something like Oslo, August 31st is one that a lot of people praise a lot too, that I really need to check out.
Yeah, he's one of the best directors working. I would love to hear how you react to Thelma.
All right, well, let's move on to our number 4 picks. And Matthew, what do you have?
My number 4 pick is Superman by James Gunn, which is, I mean, it's Superman. What do you want me to say? Superman, he's a journalist in Metropolis. He embarks on a journey to reconcile his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. It's a Superman movie. Lex Luthor is the bad guy. There's a big kaiju fight in the middle. There's a big superhero fight at the end. There's a number of other DC superheroes. And it's everything that DC films haven't been for the past several years, in that it really doubles down on kindness and vulnerability as being the important things. I know that this is not a film that would make a lot of people's top 10s necessarily. But as a longtime fan of Superman, lifelong even, and other sort of superhero characters like, say, Captain America, who, you know, they really exemplify the idea of, you know, the important part of Superman is not the super, it's the man. And this movie remembers that in a way that I have been waiting for years. This is the best Superman movie since the first time Christopher Reeve put on the suit. And it's easily, I think, the best DC superhero movie since Wonder Woman. It's bright, it's colorful, it's fun. And again, it's kind. You know, it definitely has some James Gunn stuff in it. It's very quippy. There's one scene of like violence that I know at least one person in my life has reacted really poorly to. But none of that is a deal breaker for me, because it all serves the idea of the way the Superman wins this is through empathy. So I watched this film on an IMAX screen, and it's wonderful. I've watched it at home on 4K. It's still wonderful. And I cannot wait to see what James Gunn does with a sequel. And I would just argue that David Cornsweet is maybe perfectly cast as both Clark Kent and Superman, which is, again, a pretty hard needle to thread, as other films have proven. So it's a wonderful film. I assume you've seen it. It's a huge blockbuster. So, yeah.
I did indeed. I have indeed seen it. Yes. I liked it. I think I gave this a 3 or 3.5 out of 5. It's perfectly fine. I'm not the biggest comic book movie fan. I think a lot of people probably know that about me. I think it's a little too James Gunny for me, leaning into some of the stuff that I don't quite care for in his work. That said, I think it does have some pretty great moments. I think Corn Sweat is a very good not James Bond, Superman, Clark Kent, Rachel Brosnahan's also very good. I also really enjoyed the Justice League stuff that's brought in. I thought that was some really good moments of comedic relief. This is a movie that mostly worked for me. It's fine. It's not one I'm going to revisit.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Again, like I fully get that this is maybe an outlier pick for me. It's very big, popular, populist even. And I also fully get that like James Gunn is an acquired taste as a filmmaker. I think that it's definitely arguable that Guardians of the Galaxy works better for his style than Superman does. But just the understanding that like the Superman needs to be a good man is something that's been missing for a while, and something that resonated with me, at least in cinema, something that has been missing for a while, and something that resonated with me very personally because I love that version of the character, and this movie really worked for me.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that like a lot of times, especially with comic book movies, people are either in the camp of this is the greatest thing ever or this is the worst thing ever, and there's no room for nuance or middle ground. And unfortunately, I just sort of fall in the middle ground of like it was fine, it was good. I'm happy that it worked so well for you and for other people, and that's a bit of a frustrating part of the discourse of talking about movies. Whereas if you're not saying it's the greatest thing ever or the worst thing ever, then you're a piece of shit.
Oh yeah, I would never. No,
I know you wouldn't.
Yeah,
but like that, you deal with these idiots online all the time.
That's true. I do.
Yeah. But willingly so, and it baffles me.
Yeah, it's. I get it. Like, it's not going to be for everyone, and lots of people like to say like, it takes a lot to make a great superhero film, and I think that it doesn't happen that often. And I think that's also a deeply personal thing, whether you're going to like it or not. And this one just happened to work for me. So
nice. I'm happy to hear that, Matthew. I'm glad. Speaking of, what is my version of the Avengers is coming up at number 3 is Richard Linklater's Nouvelle Vague, which is the behind the scenes of the filming of Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless, a landmark of the French New Wave movement. Linklater released 2 films last year. He did Nouvelle Vague and I'm blanking on what the other one was called.
Blue Moon.
Blue Moon. Thank you very much. Thank you, without me having to look that up. And I prefer this one over Blue Moon. I know a lot of people prefer Blue Moon, and I think it's a very good movie. A very great Ethan Hawke performance in a perfectly fine movie. Nouvelle Vague, I'm not joking. This is like my version of the Avengers, of the greatest team up. We get some of the most famous, not only French, but iconic filmmakers of this era shown in this film. And it's done with so much grace and reverence for these figures that you can't help but fall in love with it if you're a fan of cinema. We get these fantastic title cards introducing who these people are before the scene starts. So it'll be like Claude Charbal, and then we'll see him, and then like he'll be in the next scene, or Agnes Varda, or people like that. But it isn't limited to just directors. He also highlights the people that work on his film, like the camera people, the makeup artists, the producers, everyone that, and it just like has so much love and affection for the act of movie making that it's hard not to fall so head over heels for it. And then add in some absolutely charming performances. Guillaume Marbec as Jean-Luc Godard, I think, is terrific in his, like, he only speaks in in quotes, and he's the most insufferable person, but you understand that he still is a genius, and I love it. And then the 1-2 punch of Zoe Deutsch as Jean Seberg and Aubrey Dulin as Jean-Paul Belmondo, I think are terrific together. They have terrific chemistry as playing the two leads in Breathless. So I really love this film. If you're a fan of, classic cinema, of the French New Wave, of Richard Linklater hangout movies, this is the movie for you.
It's funny. So I haven't seen this one, to be clear, and another one where it's just I haven't got around to it yet. But I've known you for a few years now, right? When did we meet? Like 2020, 2001, 2021, something like that.
Yeah.
And knowing what I know of you, my friend, I'm actually a little bit surprised this isn't your number one.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Yeah.
Like, it just seems like it's almost like Richard Linklater took a meeting. He's like, I met, there's this kid called Dakota who has a podcast up in Canada. I'm going to make a movie specifically for him. It's because that's what this movie is. I haven't even seen it, and I can tell you this is laser focused on your sensibilities. So I'm very happy it exists for you. I would really like to watch it. I don't know why I haven't. Just busy.
It's so good, yeah.
But I'm so happy it exists for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I've watched it twice now. I saw it at TIFF, where Linklater was in attendance, and came up afterwards and talked about it, and it was so cool. And then I watched it again at home with my wife, and just sort of reaffirmed how much I love this movie. And you're right, this movie is absolutely tailor-made for me. So if the things I talk about and the things I seem to like, if people like that things, then I really hope you check this out, because a lot of the attention did go to Blue Moon this year because of Ethan Hawke and his terrific performance, and it sort of seemed that this one went under the radar because it's mostly in French, and it kind of seems weird that Linklater directed a movie in French, because as far as I'm aware, he does not speak it. But he's worked with Julie Delpy for a very long time, and so he's quite aware with the French sensibilities and things like that, and I think he sort of nailed it exactly. So yeah, I really love this movie. It's I think in my top 3 of favorite Linklater films, which says a lot because he has a lot of classics.
That's true. Dude makes good movies.
All right. Well, then let us move on. We are, let's go to our number 3 pick. Matthew, what do you have at your number 3 film?
My number 3 film is a perfect movie, and very nearly was my number 1 movie of the year for a very long time. Because it came out early in 2025, and that is the Steven Soderbergh directed 94-minute perfect spy thriller, Black Bag. This is the story of there's a legendary intelligence agent, Catherine Woodhouse, played by Cate Blanchett. Is she suspected of betraying her nation, the United Kingdom, and her husband, played by Michael Fassbender, also a legendary agent, is the agent assigned to investigate whether or not that's true. And so basically, it's a mole hunt. There's 6 main characters. His wife is the main suspect. And if you have not seen this movie, I don't want to tell you anything else about it, but it is a perfect 94-minute thriller. I cannot get over how much fun it is, how great everyone is in it, and how rewatchable it is. In addition to Blanchett and Fassbender, you have Tom Burke, playing a sort of, what would be the right word for Tom Burke's character in this movie? He's the sort of...
He was a promising up-and-coming agent destined to become a director of MI6, but sort of gets stalled out due to his own personal shortcomings.
Yeah, that would be the polite way to put it. He's a bit of a disaster. He's an alcoholic, womanizing alcoholic. Can't get out of his own way. You have Marisa Abela, who I've seen her in a couple things now. And this is, I think, my favorite thing she's been in as the sort of young, up and coming, very ambitious agent. You have Regé-Jean Page as the middle management guy, the risk taker, the sort of dangerous one, and Naomi Harris as all of their therapists. And they all have friends, and the 2 main scenes in this movie are dinner parties with all 6 of them, and they're both so much fun. I cannot get over how good this movie is. It is, I think, the best Soderbergh in a while. And I love Soderbergh. Like he's easily a top 5 director for me. And this is, I think, his strongest one in a while. I cannot believe how under the radar it went. I guess because it came out so early last year. I think it was like February last year. But when I saw it, it stayed my number 1 film of the year most of the year. Like, I think even I had there was a moment where 2 things that I had sort of like, I had a favorite. It was my favorite, and then another thing came up that like when I rewatched it became my favorite. But this is my favorite movie of the year for a long time, and I watched it 2 or 3 times now, and I can't wait to watch it a million more times. It's perfect. It's a perfect movie. And how do you feel about it, Dakota?
Yeah, I'll say this about it. It's also my number 3 movie. I'm in complete agreement with you. It was my number 1 for most of the year too. I cannot believe this movie got dumped into theaters in February. I talked about Nouvelle Vague got no fanfare. Black Bag got no fanfare. And it is an absolute crime. I know that Soderbergh has kind of been flying under the radar for the most part of, I don't know, the last 15 years or so, which is a damn shame because he's really sort of reinvented himself as such an experimental filmmaker. I know he always kind of was, but like he's really kind of honed into, hey, I'm going to try something really new and unique and do a whole film around it. And it's kind of been to mixed success, I would guess is to say, putting it politely. And here, this is sort of him being like, I'm going to do a big budget spy caper, except for all the big budget stuff is going to happen off screen and you're not going to see any of it. And the centerpiece of this movie is the 2 dinner sequences that you mentioned. And it's going to be the most thrilling dinner sequences you've ever seen.
They really are too. Like they really
completely nails it, especially that first one. Oh my God. Like there's a few moments in that first dinner sequence where you just cannot believe that he wrote that script and then the actors just perfectly nail every moment. So that way, and I mean this, pun intended, twisting the knife in just the right ways.
Yeah, 100%. It's so perfect. And like, yeah. I think Michael Fassbender has one of my favorite line deliveries of the year. And I don't want to spoil it, but there's a moment where he says to Marissa Abella's character, he says, "That's how it works." And it's like such a perfect moment in the film.
Yeah.
And also, and this is, I think, an underrated thing. So I'm just going to fully call it out. This is a very horny movie in the best way possible.
Oh my God, yes. It's so sexy.
And I know that like that doesn't work for a lot of people these days, but like if you are a person who misses films with adult people being adult people, this is a very horny movie in the best way possible.
Yeah.
So you should definitely watch it.
And like, there's no nudity in this movie. I don't think there's an actual sex scene in this movie, but nope. Like the horniness, the energy that radiates off of all 6 of these people is insane, off the charts levels.
And it's not that like people don't even dress revealingly. Like it's not even that there's no sex. It's like most people are wearing fairly conservative outfits even.
Yeah.
But it is so,
there's like one shot,
so horny.
There's one shot near the beginning where Cate Blanchett is, I think she might be in her underwear and she has a robe on over top, and like clearly they're about to have sex, but like it's a moment where you're just like, oh, Cate Blanchett, hell yes.
Yeah. All of this. It's a perfect movie. I can't believe it didn't blow up last year. We should do better as a society. And I know that like Soderbergh has been a bit hit or miss. I really appreciate that he's definitely the kind of filmmaker who's not afraid to like take a risk and do something weird. But he's saying that he's also had like, for every like presence, there's a Kimmy. For every let them all talk, there's a high flying bird. So like he's a guy you want to see what chances he's taking. And this one is, again, I think it's a home run.
Yeah. Marissa Abella does absolutely steal this film. She's terrific. You didn't even point out the very small supporting role by Pierce Brosnan, who shows up. Clearly a nod to his own MI6 films of the past,
Yep.
as the now director of the agency. And, I think the fact that Soderbergh is so genre hopping and so experimental and changes, I think that might be the reason why this failed, is because what's a Steven Soderbergh movie these days? In the early 2000s, you knew exactly with what you were getting, but like now it's so hard. Like even saying, "Oh, this is a spy thriller." Well, it is, but like it's not. It's more about the interpersonal dynamics within a group of people, especially between couple friends.
I mean, that's a Steven Soderbergh movie, though, right? Like, the thing about his whole deal is interesting interpersonal relationships, and then he just like hangs a different frame on that every time. This time it's a spy thriller. One time it was strippers. A couple of times
Yeah.
it has been heist teams. One time it was a pandemic, which is a film that I watched during the pandemic, and like that was a bit of a trip. But like I would argue that he definitely has a very distinct style that he then applies to all these disparate genres, and sometimes it doesn't work, but when it works, it works like gangbusters, and this is definitely one of those times.
100%. Yeah, this is going to be one of those movies that is going to pop up on lists for years to come. What's an underrated masterpiece? What's something I can watch on Netflix that not many people have heard of, but everyone will love? Black Bag. Black Bag is going to be the number one answer of like underrated movies people haven't seen for the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not that guy who's like, movies are too long today, because I just don't think that's true, for one, but also 94 minutes. Fucking perfect.
There is something to say about like a perfectly tight film.
Yeah, it's 94 minutes. There's no wasted moments. Like it's so tight. It's so perfectly constructed.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on. We've got another voicemail here, and we've got one from friend of the show, Alicia Brenner, who hosts the podcast The Lore Hounds, and also is a writer over on ContraZoomPod.com, so you can check out her work there as well. So let's hear what Alicia has to say about her favorite film of the year.
Hello, this is Alicia Brenner from the Lore Hounds, and my favorite movie of 2025 is, well, honestly, it's a tie. There are two films I've seen 4 times each, which is a lot for me, because these two films not only keep my dark ADHD little brain consistently entertained, but they offer new layers of both beauty and beastly commentary that I can peel back on each rewatch. But since you've already heard plenty about Sinners by now, maybe even from me if you listen to the One Sentimental Begonia After Another episode, then let me talk about my top 2025 film that has gotten less love, 28 Years Later. So 28 Days Later blew my mind when it was released in 2002, when I was going through one of my most intense horror film phases, otherwise known as college, where I even took horror film courses and they let me count it toward my communication credits. Vive l'éducation. 28 Weeks Later exists. It does have a very memorable opening and an all-timer helicopter blade moment. But just to say, I had high expectations going into 28 Years Later, and it surpassed them. It feels tied to the prior films in subtle ways, such as the filmmaking techniques used, but also like something entirely new. It had moments of real humor, a deep sense of humanity, even in regard to the infected, and some of the most visceral violence I've seen in years. So you are warned there. It took me through the full gamut of emotions, though, including real tears, and the first time I watched, I held my breath for half that fucking film. It was a lot more relaxing the second time and third and fourth, knowing who was going to live or die, though the reactions of the people around me are always fun. But that gives me time to appreciate more of the details, because this film takes a lot of big swings. And it hit several home runs for me, especially the editing and the music. I cannot overstate how much I love the score, how well it works for me in the context of this film, the way it thrums throughout. I really hope that Danny Boyle brings Young Fathers back to score part 3. I unabashedly adore the at times intentionally disorienting cinematography, especially the variety and specificity of the angles and the way the shots are framed. I love the editing, the way it weaves centuries of learned behavior and consequences right into the text. And of course, the makeup, the sound design, the pacing, the synergy of all of the above. I just find it an incredible film on every level. And the writing remains a masterpiece of surpassing depth and maturity.
And this segues very perfectly into what is your number 2 pick, Matthew?
My number 2 pick of the year is 28 Years Later by Danny Boyle, which she just spoke about. What can I even add here? But basically, for those of you not in the know, 28 Years Later is a long legacy sequel to 28 Days Later. It's set 28 years after the rage virus outbreak. The island of Great Britain is quarantined. And there's a small community of people who have survived in a fortified island just off the mainland. And then one of them leaves the island and discovers some secrets and wonders and horrors and different things that are happening on the mainland. And ultimately embarks on a quest with his mother towards who is sick, towards a doctor. I cannot tell you how deeply personally affecting this movie was. I don't know, not to like out too much of my own tea here, but I'm a person whose mother died a number of years ago. And this is a film about a young man called Spike, named Alfie Williams, who's taking his mother across a ravaged landscape to see a doctor because she's dying. And this movie messed me up, man. Like, this is a movie that, like, yes, there's rage-infected zombie monsters, and they are terrifying, and they're also very much not the point. They are a ever-present threat, and they are very much not the point. This is a story about love and grief and acceptance. It features yet another amazing performance by Jodie Comer. Aaron Taylor Johnson remains super reliable, but Alfie Williams, I can't wait to see where this kid's career goes. He's so good as Spike in this, and he gets to play most of his time against one of the greatest to ever do it, Ralph Fiennes, as the mysterious Dr. Kelson. This is a film that I loved from the first time I saw it. This is a film that is deepened by its sequel, which came out this year, which is, spoiler alert, is going to be on my list for this year. I cannot quite articulate how much this movie means to me just by virtue of its existing. And that's even before we get into the fact that I think this is a perfect way, like a great example of a perfect way to handle a legacy sequel. It doesn't just try to be 28 Days Later again, or even 28 Weeks Later again. It takes a look at the original setup and says, what is the furthest extent of where this might have gone in 28 years? And then it goes to that place in terms of its world building. I think a lot of people, I think there's at least a cohort of people who probably just wanted 28 Days Later again. And I cannot tell you how happy I am that this is not that. It's deeply personal to me, but I love this movie with every frame of this movie, and its sequel. So how do you feel about this film? Have you seen it? I hope that you have.
So I'll say that I only watched 28 Days Later for the very first time late last year. It's something that always eluded me. Just catching up on horror movies I didn't grow up with. And when I saw that this was on your list, I was bound and determined to get to it. But I know everyone says skip 28 Weeks Later, but I am not that person. So I watched 28 Weeks Later, and I'll have to say, I also really liked it. Not bad. There's some stuff I didn't care for in it, but overall, pretty solid. And I really wanted to get to 28 Years Later, but unfortunately I ran out of time. I was hoping to do it today before we recorded, but it just did not come to pass. So I'll probably end up watching it in the next week or so, and I'll be able to personally let you know what I think about it. But as of right now, I've not seen it yet, so I'm sorry.
Honestly, that's fine, because I hope that when you do, you connect with it. I don't know that anyone's going to connect with it as deeply, as personally as I have. And to be fair, there is a moment in it that throws a lot of people right at the very end. But this is why I also point out that if you get the chance to see this movie and then to watch its sequel fairly close to it, you'll be very rewarded by that experience.
Yeah, I'm very excited to watch The Bone Temple as well, because that one looks terrific.
Yeah, I would actually argue The Bone Temple is maybe the better of the two movies, but they are, like, it picks up immediately where this one ends, and very purposefully like that. So it, yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it's an amazing film. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland working together is a magical thing, and this one and Bone Temple were made basically at the same time, or very close to at the same time. And it bothers me that not enough people saw Bone Temple, that like a third one, which is very set up for the record, is not already in production. Like, they have a story in mind, but they don't have production underway. And I am desperate for them to finish this trilogy.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm very curious to sort of see how that sets up. Obviously, I have not seen either of them, so I don't really know what the deal is. But I know that there is a lot of passionate fans for it, and a lot of people are already talking about Ralph Fiennes as Best Supporting Actor for next year's Oscars based on his performance in The Bone Temple. So hopefully there's legs to this movie then.
Yeah, he's great. And if it fails at the box office but wins him some awards, that would be just weird poetic justice, because, like, it bothers me how we didn't support this film, man. Again, we as a society need to do better.
Yes, that's true. All right, well, let's move on to my number 2 pick, and that is Jafar Panahi's It Was Just an Accident. An unassuming mechanic is reminded of his time in an Iranian prison when he encounters a man he suspects to be his sadistic jailhouse captor. Panicked, he rounds up a few of his fellow ex-prisoners to confirm the man's identity. So I am very ashamed to say that this is my first Panahi film, and from what I gather, for fans of the legendary Iranian auteur, this is definitely a weaker output from him, a more polished output from him, but a weaker one nonetheless. So I definitely have a lot of great homework ahead of me. That said, this movie just absolutely worked for me and clicked on every level. It is so nice to sort of see, I love the films of Asghar Farhadi, but they sort of also feel like, in and of themselves, a time capsule of a very specific part of Iran, a very specific part of its culture. And this film makes it seem like it's a real place, that this just is such a lived-in world where you sort of see the realities of modern Iranians, and it does such a great job where this debate question comes from: if this is the captor and tormentor of so many people, but specifically this small group of people, what sort of justice does this person deserve? And that's the question that's being faced. And when the answer is, I don't know if this is the person or not, really muddies the question. I talked about this elsewhere. I don't know if it was in my Letterboxd review or on a podcast, but I mentioned how this sort of feels like a very familiar film. This feels like the type of film of, like, made after World War II, of like, and a Jewish person runs into a guard from Auschwitz and they have to decide what to do. This is what the film sort of feels like. And it does such a great job of this moral question of when the actual, system that exists doesn't dole out punishment for those that deserve it. When is vigilantism, extrajudicial justice, things like that, when is that okay? When is that acceptable? Is it ever acceptable? Questions like that get raised, especially the more that gets brought up of what their tormentor did, makes you really, really want to side with the system doesn't work, and sometimes you need to take matters into your own hands. Was this a film that you've seen, Matthew?
Nope. It's another one that I think I missed it at VIF, and then Just didn't really have a chance to get to it. Wasn't really available to me for a long time. And then it's only just recently been added to Movie, which I am a subscriber to. So it is definitely on my list, but I have not gotten to it. I meant to, because much like you, I saw it, with 28 years. It was, I was like, oh, number 2, I should check that out. But then, things happened, and I was going to watch it yesterday, but then did not have time. So it's one that I'll be visiting soon, but I unfortunately have not visited it yet.
Yeah, there's some great moments of comedy. I won't reveal it, but there's a scene involving some security guards that might be one of my funniest moments of the year. And then other than that, it's basically an hour 45 of a group of people, on various ends of a spectrum of what do we do with this person. And it's a great debate to behold, and a open-ended ending that I've already heard a few different people's takes on it, and they're all wildly different. And I kind of love how you can walk away from this film and have very different interpretations of the final scene of this movie.
Yeah. I mean, say less.
So,
you've sold me. So
I'm going to say no more. All right. Well, we're about to get to our number 1 picks, but before we do that, we'd be remiss if we didn't sort of mention a few honorable mentions. I know we already kind of, tagged a couple films that the other person said, oh, hey, that would have made my honorable mentions list, things like that. What types of movies do you quickly have on your honorable mentions that like almost made your top 10, but because, I made an arbitrary rule of, we're only doing 10 films, they sadly had to be cut?
I'm only going to mention a couple, and I slimmed my list down even since we started talking, just because we're running a little long. But a couple that I wanted to highlight. One was The Ugly Stepsister, which is a horror movie. It is basically Cinderella, but the main character is the ugly stepsister, and it details the lengths that women will go to for beauty and societal acceptance. I don't want to say too much more than that, but it is a lot in the best way. If you're queasy about body horror, maybe give it a reconsider. But like it's a great film. I'm going to throw Blue Moon onto my list because it was my favorite Linklater of the year. Because I do think that Ethan Hawke, and in particular Andrew Scott, really carry the movie. I'm also going to shout out The Assessment, which is Himesh Patel and Elizabeth Olsen and Alicia Vikander in a dystopian world where Himesh Patel and Elizabeth Olsen play a couple who want to have a baby. And in order to have a baby, they have to prove to the government that they can do it. And so Alicia Vikander shows up and play acts as their baby. And it is absurd and hilarious and heartbreaking. And the kind of movie that you'll watch it and you'll be like, what was that? And then it's like days later, you'll be like, that movie, man. Like that movie, like, it'll keep you thinking for days in the best way possible about the comparative like luxury that their life is presented in, but the dystopian world that they obviously exist in are so contrary to one another. And then just Alicia Vikander dials it to 11, like gives everything to the role. It's a wonderful performance. Not to mention Elizabeth Olsen and Himesh Patel, who both have very different vibes in the movie, both of which serve the narrative incredibly well. And then last but not least, and again, I'm skipping over a couple because you're going to talk about them. But I just want to shout out that The Naked Gun is the funniest movie I've seen in a minute. And the first film in ages to really recapture the magic of Zucker, Abrams, and Zucker, who are filmmakers who are very dear to my heart. I've been a fan of theirs forever. Airplane's my favorite movie. This is the first movie since probably the 1980s that I think would equal some of their early work, some of their sort of masterpiece work. So I'm very happy that it exists. And I might just watch that one again tonight, actually, because I could use a laugh. And it's not trying to be anything other than hilarious. It's great. And turns out Liam Neeson, the secret to the best of Zucker, Abrams, and Zucker is that they cast these really heavy dramatic actors to deliver absurd dialogue, and it turns out Liam Neeson, perfect choice for that. So,
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say as my honorable mentions, because there's a couple in your list that would also be in mine, and I just don't want to have too much overlap.
Yeah, I'll co-sign all the movies that you mentioned as your honorable mention as well, with a very, very heavy preface of I'm normally fine with body horror, but The Ugly Stepsister got me a couple times of I almost was ready to turn it off.
Yeah.
Because it was that intense. So yeah, be forewarned. It's great though, but be forewarned. So some of my honorable mentions, you already had Warfare, the major list. Rental Family, loved it. That's Brendan Fraser playing I don't want to say washed up actor, because he was never really a prominent actor, now living in Japan, who ends up booking with an agency where they rent out family members. And so, you can rent this man to be at your funeral, or in this case, pretend to be the estranged father of a child who is trying to get into an elite private school, or as a journalist who is interviewing a legendary director so he has someone to tell his stories to, things like that. This is a very heartfelt film. I loved it. I know a lot of people, it was too saccharine for, but it really worked for me. Sinners, I don't think it's a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. I think once it kind of gets into the vampire stuff, it does lose a bit of the steam. But man, is this movie ambitious as hell, and features probably the greatest single sequence from cinema in all of last year. And all you have to say is the sequence from Sinners, and everyone knows exactly what you're talking about. It's that good. And love seeing success for Michael B. Jordan. I've loved him ever since The Wire. Marty Supreme, also a movie that kind of is flawed, and if you've seen Uncut Gems, you've seen Marty Supreme, but Timmy does a great job in this movie, and frankly it's the who's who cast of supporting characters that really deliver in this film that I really loved. And then Hamnet, a movie that is held together by a absolutely towering performance from Jessie Buckley, and a final sequence that, if it works for you, it's really going to work for you and absolutely destroy you. Otherwise, it's a pretty good, pretty serviceable movie, but yeah, Jessie Buckley, just wow, what an incredible talent. Another person who I've been a huge fan of for a long time, and happy that she's finally sort of broken into the mainstream name recognition status and got a very well-deserved Oscar for it.
Yeah, I mean, co-sign everything you're talking about, basically. I haven't seen Rental Family, but it's also on my list. Marty Supreme, kind of shocked that he didn't win Best Actor, honestly, not because Michael B. Jordan was bad or anything, but because that was very much the kind of performance that the Academy normally rewards. But again, I was a bit put off by the film in general, but you're right. It's very much a Safdie film, Safdie Brothers film. Hamnet would have made my list if I had seen it in 2025. I watched that movie recently. Universal Pictures was kind enough to send me a copy of the 4K, and I cried for 10 minutes after it ended. So just to give you an idea, if the movie works for you, holy shit. It takes a while to get there. But as soon as it reveals what it actually is, it'll mess you up, man. It's so much in the best way possible. I felt so I wept, but also it felt lighter at the end. It breaks your heart, but it'll also help put it back together again. So can't recommend it enough. Chloe Zhao is doing amazing things with the art of cinema, and can't wait to see what she does next. She can do whatever she wants, and whatever it is, I'll watch it.
Very true.
And then Sinners was it's a good movie. I've only seen it the once. I felt like a contrarian because I thought it was fine, much like we talked about earlier. I've been meaning to rewatch it. I imagine when I rewatch it, my estimation will go up. But at the time that I watched, I was like, okay, that was good. I didn't get the hype when I first saw it, and maybe it was just I'm a huge fan of Ryan. Maybe it was just towering expectations. Whatever it was, I didn't jive with it the first time that I saw it. So I've been meaning to rewatch it and I haven't, and I really should. But yeah, none of these movies are bad. They're all good. You should watch them all.
Well, the time has come. We are now at our number one picks. So, Matthew, without further ado, why don't you reveal what your number one film of the year was?
Oh, my number one film of the year was a film we've already talked about. The story of a logger living a quiet life, just in the Pacific Northwest from about 1917 to the 1960s. This is Train Dreams, directed by Clint Bentley, starring Joel Edgerton, Felicity Jones, Nathaniel Arcan, Clifton Collins Jr., Kerry Condon, William H. Macy, and narrated by Will Patton. This is a very quiet, unassuming movie. It is probably the most beautifully photographed movie, certainly of 2025. I'm shocked it didn't win every cinematography award under the sun. And it's just a quiet, affecting story about a man existing in the world. And I know that sounds boring, but it is so beautiful and life affirming, both in the moments of joy and the moments of sorrow that this man experiences. And I had a chance to watch this in a cinema and I missed it. And once I saw it at home, I have never been more upset about that before. This is another one that, like, maybe it's personal to me, but like I found it so deeply affecting. I found Joel Edgerton so deeply affecting, the type of man that he is and the type of life that he leads. Again, not to spill too much of my own tea, but like my grandfather was a logger in the Pacific Northwest for most of his life. So like this movie was laser focused on me specifically. I can't speak highly enough about it. If it were up to me, Joel Edgerton would have won every acting award. And Clint Bentley would have won the Adapted Screenplay Award. And the film itself would have won, at the very least, cinematography, but probably Best Picture as well. I can't get over how much this movie flew under the radar. You know, every year there's that movie that's just sort of there, that's very nominated, but doesn't take anything home. And that was this movie this year. And I do not understand it at all. This is another movie that, like, at the end of it, I wept. But it was tears of joy and relief. And I felt affirmed, you know? I found it deeply affecting. And you've already talked a little bit about it, so I won't make you talk about it again. But like, Train Dreams was far and away my favorite film of the year. It was black bagged for a long time, and then there was 28 years later, sort of was also right there with it, and then Train Dreams was just like blew them both out of the water.
Yeah, absolutely terrific. Yeah, I have already said my thoughts on it, so I won't belabor the point. But yeah, you're absolutely right on everything that you said. This is a phenomenal film, and one that if you haven't checked out yet, I absolutely implore you to watch. It's gonna have you, crying basically the entire film. Like this is a movie that is going to tug at your heartstrings and will not let go for the entire runtime. And if you're not feeling all the feelings by the end of it, you are absolutely dead.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like you'd have to have a heart of stone, I think, to not be affected by this. I mean, the stuff he goes through in the middle, in particular, but also just the affirmation at the end is so wonderful that. Again, cannot speak highly enough about this film. And we talked a little bit before about like most versus best acting, and I think that this is the quietest but most intentional performance of the year from Edgerton. And also in particular, Felicity Jones, I think is sort of wonderful as his perfect counterpoint. Again, I will just keep rambling about this movie for ages if you let me, but I just implore everyone to watch this movie because it is so deeply amazing.
All right, well, we have one last voicemail, and that is from friend of the show, Martin Strange of the Filmsplaining with Martin Strange podcast.
Hello, Dakota and Contra Zoom. This is Martin Strange of Filmsplaining with Martin Strange, and I'm here to talk about my favorite film of 2025, which just so happened to be the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences' favorite film as well, because one battle after another, we just saw win Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Casting. And there's one I'm forgetting. Sean Penn, for Best Supporting Actor, even though he didn't show up. Look, this movie was just one of the greatest theater experiences I had in 2025. I actually wept during one sequence when I first saw this film. And my eyes were just glued to the screen from start to finish. I never once thought about my life outside of what I was experiencing in that theater. It did not feel long. It did not feel rushed. I think this is the thing that Paul Thomas Anderson has been working towards his entire career. It is a big budget action popcorn movie with an incredibly important, incredibly vital message. And it's funny, and it's entertaining, and it's horrifying. And you have a genuine discovery in Chase Infinity, who I think will be a movie star for years to come. You have Sean Penn absolutely blowing everyone out of the water with his utterly insane, deranged performance. I can't say enough good things about this movie. I've seen it 3 times now. I saw it twice in theaters. The second time in IMAX, which was probably even a more breathtaking experience just to see it on a screen that wide. And then I watched it again at home. I just love this movie, and it's rare that my tastes align with the Oscars, but that happened this year. And so I was a very happy boy when it won all these awards at the Oscars. And I think this is a movie that people will be talking about for years to come. It is evergreen. It will not grow old or stale or go out of fashion because its themes and its message are timeless. And it's the kind of radical art that we need more of in the world that can also reach a wide audience. Yeah, I will go on for days and days. I've already gone on too long, but thank you guys for having me on once again to talk about one of my favorite films. I hope that after the Oscars, everyone who has not seen One Battle After Another from Paul Thomas Anderson will go and check it out, because in my opinion, it is required viewing. All right, thanks.
So, no surprise here. The reason why I put it is because my number one film of the year was also One Battle After Another. I absolutely adored this film. You know, it's what's there to say now? It's Paul Thomas Anderson's magnum opus. When their enemy resurfaces after 16 years, a group of ex-revolutionaries reunite to rescue the daughter of one of their own. This movie is sort of like 3 different stories put together. You know, we've got this opening sequence of the French 77 causing rightful chaos and freeing detained immigrants from prisons, and then it ends with the leader, Perfidia Beverly Hills, played by Teyana Taylor, giving birth and realizing that she does not want to be a mother, so she leaves her child with the father, Leonardo DiCaprio, played by Ghetto Pat. His character is Ghetto Pat. And then flash forward, Ghetto Pat now lives under the name Bob, where he's taking care of his now teenage daughter. And then eventually the villain, Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn, comes and kidnaps the daughter in effort to see if, you know, I don't even want to say, who hasn't seen this movie by now? So I'm not going to reveal what's happening. But all I'll say is, damn, what a movie. Paul Thomas Anderson throws everything at the screen, and frankly, all of it sticks for me. You know, we've got a fantastic lead performance by Leo, who kind of grounds all of these segments together. Teyana Taylor is an absolute firecracker in the first bit, just really nailing what we need to play this revolutionary. And then you've got Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro on opposite ends of the coin of, one being an absolute agent of chaos and one being the sensei of resilience and calmness and patience and love and understanding. And they just both absolutely nail their parts. And then Regina Hall comes in at the very end and also just kind of blows it out of the water in this very quiet, subtle performance as a revolutionary as well, who now is hiding out as a nun. This movie is incredible. I love the satire. I love the comedy. I love the seriousness. I love the cinematography. I love the car chase sequence. I love Leo being a stoner idiot. I love Teyana Taylor firing a machine gun while she's 9 months pregnant. I love everything about this movie. I love the ridiculous walk that Sean Penn has, and when he licks his comb and uses it to comb his head, or how the bad guys are called the Christmas Adventurers Club. All of this is just friggin' amazing. I love all of this. This is just such an incredible film. Ironically, it's not my favorite PTA film. It's probably my number 3 or 4, but that says more about Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography than anything. I love this movie. Was this one that worked for you, Matthew? I know, because it doesn't work for everyone.
No, not really, unfortunately. I will say that I didn't hate it or anything. I just thought it was fine, which made me, again, another one where I was like, I seem to be the odd man out on this one, but I didn't dislike it. I just thought it was fine. I thought that it, much like you said about, what was the one you said that didn't really work as the sum of its parts? That was this movie for me.
Weapons? That would be Weapons.
Yeah, so I really liked, this movie is basically 3 different movies, and I really liked the first one, and I really liked the third one, and I thought the middle one was fine. And there's lots of things about it that I like. Like, I also like DiCaprio playing a burnout. Perfect. No notes. I think Chase Infinity, this being her debut, like, then she deserves to be a megastar for the rest of her life. Like, the only other thing I think she'd been in at this point was the Presumed Innocent TV show last year. And she's fantastic. Like, maybe should have won Oscars for her performance. Fantastic. I do really like, in that whole middle section, one thing I really like is that it really hammers home the point that perhaps the best opposition to active fascism is community, which I think is something we should all think about more deeply. But on the whole, like, I did not vibe with this movie very well. In fact, I know lots of people talk about Stephen J. Lockjaw, and I've talked a lot about most versus best acting, and guess what this performance is for me? It's just the most acted one of the year. I think it makes a lot of big choices. I don't think very many of them work for me, until just like slightly too much for the rest of the movie. And I totally get why people connect with it, and I legitimately wish that I liked it more than I do. And again, I don't dislike it. It's got a lot to like. I just think it's fine. And I know that makes me the odd man out, but I just think it's fine.
So please send all your angry emails to Matthew Simpson. He is at SmatthewAF on social media, so definitely send the hate mail there, please. No, that's totally fine. And I get why this movie doesn't work for everyone. And it's one of those things where, like, I got very annoyed in the run up to the Oscars, how you were only allowed to like one of Sinners or One Battle After Another. That was a lot of the online discourse, and stuff like that really annoys me. They're both terrific movies. One worked better for me than the other one, but that doesn't exclude the fact that I think they're not both terrific, bold, original, unique films. And so I'm very happy this movie exists, and I cannot wait to rewatch it.
Yeah, and that's fair, and that's all fair point. My whole brand in the lead up to award season was like, just celebrate that we got all these great movies, guys. Like, it's not a death race. Like, whichever one wins does not erase the other, and all of that's still true. And like, I'm genuinely glad that people are connecting with this film in a way that I'm not, because that's art, man. Like, art is subjective, and subjectively, this one didn't work for me like it worked for other people. But that's fine. Like, just go and enjoy what you enjoy. I'll go enjoy what I enjoy, and it'll be fine.
And I'll say as a little teaser, I am working on a Paul Thomas Anderson themed episode coming up, where we'll probably talk about this some more. So yeah, there we go. Those are our top 10 films of the year. That was a terrific exercise. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on and talking about these films. Your list is great, and I loved hearing you talk about these movies in such insightful ways.
Thanks, man. It was a pleasure to be here, as always. And I would just like to echo the sentiment back. I really appreciate your list as well. Lots of great picks, lots of stuff for me to still watch, which is probably weirdly, like, I love how insightful and enthusiastic you are about all these films, because all of them were ones, all the ones I hadn't seen were ones that I do want to see, and I want to see them all more now. And that's a good gift. So thank you for that.
Hell yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, where is the best place for people to find more of your work, and what do you have going on?
I mean, the best place to find, there's two places to find me now. The first is, I mean, obviously socials. You can find me at Matthew AF in most of the places, but mostly on Threads. You can find my sort of portfolio site, which is stretched.ca. That's where you'll find links to all of my work, including podcasts like this one. And also, I write freelance for a number of places. That's where you'll find links to those. And then more importantly, northernreel.ca is my new publication focused entirely on Canadian film, TV, and talent. It's brand new. Like, it's not even a month old as we're recording this. We've already had some great reviews up, a couple of great interviews. We are onboarding a couple of writers, including, spoiler alert, Dakota here in the next week or two. And it's been very exciting and very rewarding to focus very specifically on Canadian film, because this is true. We make a ton of great films every year. And if I can, if I can do my part to move the needle on people talking about that more, then I will feel very good about it.
I completely agree. You'll find all of Matthew's links of where he can be found in the show notes. I also want to give huge shout outs to Martin Strange, Alicia Brenner, Marta Georgievich, Rachel Ho, Randy Meehan, and Bill Antoniou, where you'll also find links to their work in the show notes as well. Thank you all so much for sending in the voicemails. Really appreciate it. And just love hearing more people talk about films. This has been a That Shelf podcast. Visit thatshelf.com for more great film discourse. Follow the show on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at ContraZoomPod. What were your favorite films of the year? Leave a comment on Spotify or send us an email. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you like to listen to podcasts on YouTube, we do post all episodes there as well. And if you really like the show, consider tipping us on coffee. Thanks for checking us out.
I'm sorry, did you say 12th year of the podcast?
It's going to be, yeah.
Congratulations, sir. That is an achievement.
Thank you.